Brunsden Community Manager for Hornbill. I'd like to welcome and thank you for joining today's webinar where we'll be learning about autoresponder entries with Victor, Application Support Specialist. Just to inform you, the delegate audio will remain muted during the presentations to facilitate flow and timekeeping. If you have questions during the presentation, please type into the GoToMeeting questions facility on the right-hand side of your screen. We will collect questions and answer them at the end of the presentation. Thank you very much for taking the time to attend. I'll now pass you over to Victor.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining today's webinar. As my colleague Anna said, today we'll be covering the email autoresponder in Supportworks. So, as a broad definition of an email autoresponder, it's the mechanism in Supportworks that allows customers or any external agent to submit service desk commands via email and to receive automatic responses to them. So it's basically, in one word, it's an automation tool for emails. If you have a look on the broad view of Supportworks and his external environment, we have a customer external mail server, which can be a Microsoft Exchange or any other type of mail server. We have our Supportworks mail service, which has, for our webinar purpose, it has an inbound connector, which can be POP3, IMAP4, or inbound SMTP. We also have a set of email routing rules. The part of Supportworks service, it has the autoresponder, which is what we're looking at today, and also in the Supportworks client, we have the mailbox and email view and all the folders. So there are three parts of Supportworks that we're interested in: mail service, Supportworks service, and Supportworks client. If we have a look on, let's say, a regular workflow, assume an email comes to our external mail server, our inbound connector, which is set to connect regularly to the mails to the external mail server, will search and retrieve any existing mail. Once the email is retrieved, it will first be passed by email routing rules, which is the first important part in setting up your email automation. Email routing rules, if we can have a look, it's a sub-in server service configuration tool, and obviously you have an option to enable and specify various conditions and rules, and depending on those rules we can take various actions. Basically, email routing rules, you can specify two actions. One is you can move your email to be processed by our email autoresponder. For example, if an email routing rule is matched, and we can have a look on the rule criteria definition, there is an option to forward the message onto Supportworks autoresponder, and the autoresponder takes charge from there on. Alternatively, the email can be also forwarded to a mailbox folder without being processed by the autoresponder. So in this case, we have a rule criteria, and instead of specifying to be forwarded to autoresponder, we can say, I don't want to be processed by that, I want to forward that message to my mailbox, and I'll process there manually. You would need to specify the mailbox in case you have more than one, and you also have the option to say in which folder I'm going to put this email. Perhaps you have a folder structure in your mailbox, you want different emails to reach different folders. So these are basically the two options you have once an email reaching the email routing rules. It can be either forwarded to email autoresponder or forwarded to Supportworks mailbox. Now, if we have a look on a couple of scenarios which are quite important in when you define your autoresponder, when you configure your autoresponder, this is basically the general workflow that an email will follow through. So for the first scenario, let's assume that our email routing rules are disabled. So the email comes in the external mail server, the connector retrieves the email, my email routing rules are not enabled. In this case, the email will be moved to the mail inbox. It's not going to be moved to any other folder than inbox. The second scenario we're looking at is we have the email routing rules enabled, but no email routing rule condition will match. So we have our conditions, the email will process the conditions, but no condition is matched here. So pretty much the same steps, the email routing are enabled, then what's going to happen? The system will look at the first or the next routing rule. Is the condition matched? If yes, if something's going to happen, like assuming that no condition is matched, then the next thing is going to check if it's the last or bottom rule in my configuration. It's very important, this aspect, because if you have a look on my example here, I have three rules defined here. The first condition, the first rule that the system will check is the first on top, then it's going to move to the next one, and so on until it reaches the bottom. So basically steps 4, 5, and 6 will be repeated until the bottom of the list is reached. It's important because, as you can see here, you can move up and down your rules. Basically, I want specific rules to be processed first, and based on that, certain actions to be done, and specific conditions to be checked sometime later, and specific action be done on that. Assuming that we go through our conditions list and no condition is matched, we reach the bottom of the condition list, the email is moved to inbox. That's a common mistake here where people don't know what's happening with email. That's the first thing you need to check. Is my email routing rules is my email actually meeting any of my defined rules? We strongly advise that you define your email routing rules, which is the first, the point of entry for emails, for automation of emails in Supportworks. We strongly advise to define your rules quite tight and make sure that they are set up properly. The last scenario I'm looking for is, let's say everything is set. I have my email routines enabled, and I have advocated for all type of emails, and any email that comes in Supportworks or in towards mailbox will match criteria. So in this case, the email comes to Supportworks, follow the same first steps. A rule condition will match. In this case, we can have steps 4 and 5 and 6 repeat a few times, because perhaps it's not the first, could be somewhere in the middle, the condition that does match. Now, the system reaches the point where it needs to make a decision, as I showed you in the previous slide, where it can either move the mail to be processed by an autoresponder, or alternatively, it can actually move the email to either inbox or any other folder. So this is basically the point where you can set the email can be moved to any different folder than inbox. In scenarios A and B, the email will reach inbox only. You can't specify for scenarios A and B what folder in your mailbox the mail will go to. I have a quick overview for scenario 8. So the steps will be 1, 2, 3, and 8. Just a quick overview to see how the workflow is followed through. For scenario B, you can have steps 4, 5, and 6 repeated multiple times, and the final step will be 8. For scenario C, again, steps 4, 5, and 6 can be repeated multiple times, and after step 7, it can either go to step 8 or 9, depending on what I've said for that specific criteria for the email to go to. Now, the email autoresponder in Supportworks, that's the interface you've been looking at. You have the rules, and same with the email routing rules, you can move them up and down, you can delete and add new rules as well. Let's take an example. For example, the log new call. This is where you set up your autoresponder rule. There are a couple of important things here to look at. The first one is the condition. Same with the email routing rules. The conditions in the autoresponder are passed one after another from top to bottom. So the first condition is going to check for new call, which is this condition, then update, self-service, and so forth. It's important to remember, if no criteria is matched for email, which is set to be processed by autoresponder, the system will generate an error email. That's very important to know that. So when you see that error, you know that even if I set specific emails to be processed by autoresponder, the autoresponder has not been configured to cater for that specific email. So, bear with me 1 second, sorry. The condition for autoresponder, what you see here on the screen is the out-of-the-box condition for log new call. Obviously, you can change that to whatever criteria you want. You can search for specific words in the subject, in the specific words in the mail body. You can cater for specific senders, or if the email was intended for specific recipients. So any conditions, you can have multiple criteria. It's basically an SQL sort of type of criteria in there. The next important part is the call-related settings. What you need to make sure here that you have a data dictionary set, a call class, an assigned group, and default SLA. If any of these 4 values are missing, the autoresponder will generate an error. The profile code is not mandatory, but if it's not set to match an existing profile code in your system, will also generate an error. So it's important to make sure you set your correlating settings properly. The next part is the email mailback settings, basically what the autoresponder will use in order to actually send the emails, which can be the rejection or confirmation of a specific action. You need to specify the mailbox, the template that will be used in case of a successful action, and the template that needs to be used in case of a rejection. The next part is, which is the service control table. This part of the autoresponder can be either enabled or disabled. Basically, what this part of the autoresponder does is will check if the sender, basically the customer, has specific right and can actually action or generate autoresponder commands. The table is Supportworks table that will be used to check for various things. It can be, for example, usually it's the users table, which is the customer tables in Supportworks, or it can be the supplier table or any other custom table, as long as it can run an SQL statement on it and it can return a positive or negative result. The key column is the key column for that table. Doesn't have any effect on autoresponder per se, but it's used for SQL statements. The control flag, it's used to define or specify the user rights. So when we have a look a bit later on customer properties, the customer can have different type of rights. They can log, update, or do various other things in regards to emails. So the combination of these rights or these checkboxes in customer properties are stored in this field called web flag. The control bit specifies which specific right is checked for this action, which is in our example log new call. We're going to have a look later for update call, for example. There's a different control bit, and I'm going to show you a bit later on where these control bits are stored and what they mean. For this number, it's a bit cryptic. The bottom part is the system is going to check if the sender is actually a registered customer and has a valid email in the system. Assuming all these autoresponder settings are set, we're going to move to the next tab, which is what happens in case the action is successful or the action is failed. Assuming the let's defining the settings for successful command. We see here that in the action drop box we have a long list, and I'm going to show you later, of what we call them VPME scripts. All the commands, all the actions in the autoresponder are managed by the VPME scripts. All the VPME scripts will use what we call parameters, which are different values that will be used to local update values, generate email templates, put the values in the email templates for the variables, which I'm going to show you later in the email templates where they are. The parameters with a bold display are mandatory. If they're missing the value, the action will fail. So the VPME script expects these bolded parameters as mandatory. When the VPME script triggers and starts, if any of these parameters are missing the value, the action will fail and you're going to get an error in the system. The regular ones, such as message body, it's not really mandatory, but if you miss that, you're going to see that certain variables in the system or certain values on the calls not going to have a value. But the action will be performed nonetheless. Same with the case for the autoresponder action in case this fails. This is pretty standard. All the rules in the autoresponder are pretty much designed the same for failed action. You need a reply email, which is basically the email sender. What mailbox I'm going to use to send this rejection email, what template I'm going to use to create the email for the failure, and what was the error message. Another important thing, if we can go look back, it's this tick box on the bottom, which specifies if I should include the file attachment in the email when I invoke the selected action. We have some occurrences in the past where the customer called us saying the attachments on the calls are missing when the email is logged via autoresponder. This tick box here on the bottom is easy to miss, so make sure if you want the attachments to be added to the call, when a call is logged or when the call is updated, make sure this bottom checkbox is enabled. If you have any questions, please write them down, and my colleague Anna will pick them and will try to answer them later. Now, moving forward, I have a virtual environment set up where I can actually give you some example of how email autoresponder works. The system I have here, it's Supportworks 762 with an ITSM 361 template, which is the latest template we have released. And with our presentation in mind, the first thing we need to check is, do we have a mailbox? Everything is set up properly. We have a POP3 connector which connects to an external server, which is fine. Then the next thing, we need to make sure that we have our email routing rules first of all enabled, and we cater for basically any type of occurrence that we like to cater for. Like I said before, when an email comes to Supportworks and I have the email routings enabled, the first condition that will be checked is the top one. If that's not met, it's going to move to the next one, and so forth. When it reaches the bottom and no condition is met, the email is going to be moved in our inbox folder. Now, assuming that the condition is met, like I said in the presentation, we can either forward the message to a specific mailbox. I only have a mailbox defined, but obviously if your system has more, you can specify what mailbox, and also by clicking here you have your folder structure of your mailbox, and you can specify on which folder the email can be sent to. The other option would be to forward the message to Supportworks to be processed by autoresponder. If that's the case, then the email autoresponder is gonna, the same as the email routing group, which is again very important, is gonna start checking the rules, starting with the top one, and then gonna move one down until it reaches the bottom on the list. If I would like, for example, a call update to be treated before log update, I can actually move it up, and this is going to be now the first rule that's going to be checked and actioned on it. Looking at how a rule is defined, I have the data dictionary here. Obviously, if I have more than one template in my system, HR, FM, or ITSM, I can specify for which data dictionary this call is going to be logged, because this is a log new call example. I can also specify what type of call it is going to be. For example, I can have, depending on certain rules or certain criteria, I want a call to be logged as a service request or, let's say, a change request. Also, I can specify various support groups depending on, again, specific criteria. Perhaps I have specific analysts in dealing with specific calls, and here I can specify, okay, this email goes to this group, this email goes to that group, and so forth. Mandatory to have, but this is not actually the SLA that the system might get. There are other parts of the system where the SLA might be picked from. It needs to have a default SLA assigned, and yeah, depending on your SLA definitions in your system. Like I said before, profile is not mandatory. If you use profile codes on your calls, make sure that the profile code that you specify here already exists in your system. Otherwise, you get obviously an error or rejection email stating that something went wrong and the call could not be logged. Email mailback settings, again, you can specify specific reply mailboxes or specific mails from specific email addresses from where the email OK or fail action generates from. You have a list of templates that you can select from. These are the out-of-the-box autoresponder ones. Obviously, you can select the most appropriate one for your action. The service control, like I said, can be enabled or disabled. If it's disabled, whatever email comes to my system, I'm not going to check whatever I've set here. I'm not going to check if it has the rights, if it's a registered customer in the system. I'm just going to do whatever I said in the OK or fail action. Usually it's a good practice to enable this. You might not want to process all or log every email that comes through. Some of the emails you might want to treat separately, manually, and so forth, or you might cater for specific rights for the customers. Like I said, in case of the criteria condition is met and everything is fine, the OK action will be triggered, and the VPME script that is specified in the action will be invoked. Like I told you before, the list is quite large. Some of you might have VPME licensing, you might have your own scripts. You can, this very large list, but usually out of the box is either AR log new call or AR log new ITSM call. The latest ITSM versions will use this VPME script. As you can see here, mandatory fields, and obviously some optional fields as well. For example, service is used in case you log a service request here. You can specify a service request, and then you would need to specify obviously the service. You can specify impact, urgency, and so forth. One important thing, if you look at the customer ID, for example, the expression used is SC_key search. The SC in front of the expression comes from the service control table. So SC stands for service control. Basically, it will mean that customer ID parameter will have the value of the column key search here. If you have a look on the first name, the the first name parameter will have the first name field value of the service control table, which in our case is user-DB. It can be any other, it can be a supplier table as well. So anything that has a CC, apologies for that, a CC in front, it will use the field from the service control table. In case of the failed action, that's pretty standard, like I said, reply, email, from address, and so forth with that. Important things to remember: email routing rules are passed from top to bottom. If no email routing rule is met, the mail is moved to inbox. If an email routing rule is met, it will execute one of the two options. It will either forward the message to a folder in a specific mailbox, or it will forward the message to be processed by autoresponder. When the email comes to autoresponder, again, very important, the rules are processed from top to bottom. If no rule or no criteria is met in any of these, for example, the second mode of the subject is not this, moving to the next, the second mode in the subject is not the password, and so forth. If no criteria is met, the system will generate a failed autoresponder request, and you can see, for example, in the Supportworks server logs that it will specify there are no autoresponder rule match, which is very important because I've seen it sometimes in the email routing, something like, let's say, for example, subject like any, which basically means any subject, any email with any subject at all will be processed by autoresponder. This is something that we strongly advise because it's very hard to cater for all possible type of emails that come into Supportworks. If I have a rule set like that, then all my emails that are not matching any of the above criteria will be sent to autoresponder. And it's very hard to cater for all possible options, which means you most likely will have errors in the system that are generated by this incorrect or not enough catered for setting. Right. If we can have a look at a few examples. For example, I have a system mailbox set here, which is one of our test mailboxes, and I'm going to try to log a new request into Supportworks. So looking at the log new call, it will mean that my email subject will have to, the second word in my subject will have to be either log call or log new call. So the out-of-the-box token function, basically it will take the subject or the mail body or whatever variable I pass through it, and it will split it into words. The wording numbering starts from 0, and it will be, so the first word in the subject or my variable will be 0, the second will be 1, and so forth. The second parameter is specifies the line. For example, for the subject, the line will be 0 because I only have one line, but I can have the body here, and the body can have multiple lines. The second parameter specifies which word I'm going to check for. As I said before, since the number starts from 0, it will mean that I'm going to check the second word in the first line of the subject if it's log new call or if it's log call or log new call. Going back here, let's say I'm sending an email to my test mailbox, and I'm going to say, for example, log call. I'm going to say here, test. Here we go. Now the email is sent. Another important thing is make sure your mail scheduler is started. This one is manually disabled in the service. I'm going to enable it now. is automatic reply. I'm going to start this now. Looking at the settings here, my mail scheduler is set to pull mail mails every 20 seconds. I do not advise that. We usually advise to set this to every 2 minutes, but that's a separate thing. This is only for internal testing purposes. As you can see in the email, looking in the service desk, I definitely had an email coming through. So you can see here, this is a successful mailback request. Looking for, it's very interesting one, not sure, but we can search it for reference. 8. I think the problem is now, I think one of my colleagues has the same email address set, so probably another system picked it up. We're going to cater for that by forcing our emails. And we're going to have another look. Right, so now the inbox is empty. We're going to try it one more time. Test. Look. Call. Test. 2. Send. Ignore. Going here. Now we found the message, which is the message we sent. It's going to process it and it's going to log the call. This is the test that we just sent. So looking on the autoresponder and email routing settings, the email came to Supportworks. I sent an email with a subject which started with a question mark, which was question mark space log call. So it means that this email routing rule criteria was met. And this email routing rule said forward the message on to autoresponder. The email went then to autoresponder. The first, or in this case, the first criteria was checked, and it said if my second word in the subject is log call or log new call, which it was, because if we're looking in the sent Python, my test was question mark log call. So that criteria was met, which was fine. The OK action was triggered, which basically triggered this PPM script that logs a new call, which we witness here. Now let's try and also have a look on a call update. Going back to our autoresponder settings. In order to update a call, then I would have my second word in the subject to be update call. Like I said, this is just the out-of-the-box condition. You can have any other condition set in your environment. This is also an out-of-the-box rule, so I haven't actually modified anything like I did for log new call. So some of you might need to do that when you first install the system, so we go through that. We make sure that we use our data dictionary, our template data dictionary. We make sure that is the correct call class. By default, this goes to supports group because the support group is already defined in the system. But obviously, if you define a different group in your system, that would need to be specified here. And the default SLA is 2 hours as well, but you can change that as you will. Now, having a look on the service control table, I'm just going to go quickly back in log new call. You can see here the control bit is 9. For update call, the control bit is 10. So basically, the control bit 10, it will look on the customer rights and it will check if the customer has rights to update calls. Looking in the OK action, we're going to see that for update call, a parameter which didn't exist in login call is the call ref. Basically, this will specify the call reference that the email is or is attempting to update. The expression here, it's an out-of-the-box expression. It's going to search for a specifically formatted call reference in the subject. Now, there was a few issues with this function. It works fine in version 7.6.0, where all the call references were prefixed with an S. When 7.6.1 and 7.6.2 were released, the call ref value didn't work anymore. The reason was that with 7.6.1 and 7.6.2, a new feature came into Supportworks where you can specify your own prefixes for each specific call class. For example, for incidents, you can prefix with IN, for service requests with SR, and so forth. The call ref value didn't work anymore because it expected the calls to start with an S. This issue has been fixed in 7.6.2 in Service Pack 1, and as an alternative, we advise our customers to use the regex function instead of call ref value. Basically, our call ref value is user-friendly regular expression function. If you have such a system, we can obviously advise how to set up your rule. It's not very user-friendly. You can definitely have a look on the internet of how regex works, but if you have trouble with the call ref value function in your system, yeah, definitely give us a call and we advise how to set up your rules to use the regex function. The other parameters are pretty much the one that we covered in our previous example. The fail action, like I said, pretty much done that. So with our example in mind, we go back to our test system and I say forward to test, and I want to update call. Actually, another more simple thing, apologies for that, is to have a look in my received email here and just reply to this, and I say update call. I'm going to say test update. Before I send this, let's make sure I'm going to catch it right here. Send this back here. So the update email that I just sent is being processed by my system. It's going to take a couple of seconds to go through the whole process, and it should generate either a success or failed message. A quick way to check this is actually open the call and have a look in the call diary if I have an update. Like I can see in the call diary update, my call was updated automatically. And you can see here the action source, which was the autoresponder. I should also get a confirmation email, which is right here. It says email call update successful and so forth. So this, based on your rules, you can see how you can update and log calls. Obviously, you can set up your system to do more complex tasks, such as custom authorizations, service requests, and change requests. But that's a bit more complex to set up. We can definitely advise on that as well. Another important thing, like I've said, let's assume that I want to log I want an email to be processed by autoresponder, but I don't have any autoresponder rule set. So let's say I have the email routing rules to process a subject that starts with a question mark and has anything after it. So going back to my system, I'm going to say sending an email to our test. And I want a question mark with nothing. If I look in my autoresponder email routing rule, so I have an email routing rule that will be matched because it starts with a question mark. And this email routing rule will say, process this to autoresponder. Going to autoresponder, I can see that no rule will match something with nothing in it, starting with a question mark. This checks for an update call in the subject. This checks for web password or web password query in the subject. Again, no nothing here and here as well. So basically, I know for sure that my email won't match any of these rules, even if I set process through autoresponder. So I go back in my system. I'm going to say send here, fail. Send, go back here and pick it up. I'm going to close this so we can see exactly that. Generate an autoresponder request. As I've said before, it will generate a failed autoresponder request. The explanation is quite straightforward. If you get this in your system, then it means an email was processed by an email routing rule, but your autoresponder rules did not cater for that email. So this is what happens when this kind of setting is in your system. Any other setting in your system, for example, like forward to mail inbox, is easy to set. We just wanted to focus on the autoresponder. If you have any questions, I think Anna gathered them already, so we're happy to answer on them.
Thanks, Victor. Just to remind everyone, if you do have a question, obviously please use the go to meeting facility on the right-hand side of your screen. We'll start going through them now. So the first one in is this person's noticed that you cannot see the email header, so you do not know who the emails come from. Is there a way of getting this information in the update?
So basically the question is in regards to updates, so let's have a look in our update call. If we have a look in our previous update, we can, obviously that's only the body, like Neil said, you can't see the header of that, but you can also have a look in the attached email to that update, which was this, so you can see here the subject, the sender, the recipient, and the body as well. Obviously, you will have this option if your data dictionary is set to attach to have attachments to the call. This can be enabled here in the email order tray. Just make sure you have this option set to 1 and the store email order trail to 1. That will actually attach the update email to your call diary, and then you can see your update email right here. One thing that I skipped for was that I'm going to show you where those web controls flag values are stored to. So going to the Supportworks data dictionary, open our database, scroll down all the way to the user DB, which is right here, and we're going to search for the web flag field. If you can see here, we have the property name flags. If we have a look here, we're going to see all the bits and what they mean. For example, we can see here that bit 9, which we saw on the log call rule, means that the customer can log calls via email. Bit 10 means that customer can update calls via email. So if you're not sure what those control bits are or how to set them, have a look in here to see what every bit does. Now, where on the customer properties, all these bits and all this information is stored on the customer processes. In the service desk access, there's a section called email rights. So based on these settings right here, a customer can log, update, or request status reports such as the web self-service password. Based on the combination of these three, and obviously on the combination of self-service right here, which is separate, but it's considered when the web flag value is built. The web flag value, it's an integral value. It's a combination of all these kind of rights depending on what settings you have. Right. Another thing that we quickly wanted to have a look at is basically where you can find more information if you want to have a look at for autoresponder email routing rights. So on our community portal, go to your specific version of your Supportworks platform. In administration guide, you can scroll to have a look on autoresponder email commands, and obviously the a bit more broad description on what out-of-the-box comments do and how they work. Autoresponder email templates, which are, I forgot to cover this. If we have a look here on manage email templates for your either your mailbox or your personal mailbox, all the system autoresponder are stored here. Now, an important thing to remember is that you cannot create new autoresponder templates. You will have to use the out-of-the-box one. Obviously, you can change them to fit your purposes. You can add text. You can change the format, how they display. You can put an HTML format. You can add pictures and so forth. But you can't add new templates for system autoresponder. Going back to our documentation, so basically, if you want to find out how the email autoresponder works, you can find that in administration guide. In regards to how the email routing rules works, you can scroll down to configuration guide. There's a section here for inbound email routing rules, which covers basically what we talked about in the beginning of the presentation and the webinar. Another section in the configuration guide is, besides the inbound email routing rules, you have the email autoresponder, which details basically how the email autoresponder works, how the commands are processed. You also have how you can set up your autoresponder rules. Here, the rule naming. You also have a section here. You can see here basically what variables you can use to create your rule. You can use to, from address, to domain, from domain, and so forth. Have a look in the community portal to get more details on autoresponder and how to set up properly.
Thank you, Victor. We don't seem to have any more questions that have come through at the moment. However, obviously, if you do have any questions, feel free to follow up with myself. You should have my contact details or your relationship manager. I would just like to thank everyone for attending. I hope you found it useful. The recording will be made available and the link posted on the customer forum shortly. But obviously do subscribe to the Supportworks YouTube channel as well to make sure you're up to date with the latest recordings. Finally, thank you everyone for today. I hope you have a lovely Easter weekend, and we look forward to seeing you on the next Hornbill Academy on the 30th of April on SLAs and installations. Thank you.